David Graeber, an anthropologist and activist, postulates that a significant portion of modern work is fundamentally meaningless, contributes little to society, and could even be socially or psychologically harmful. A bullshit job, as defined by Graeber, is a job that is pointless, unnecessary, or pernicious that even the employee cannot justify its existence. These jobs are different from merely unenjoyable or hard jobs. Instead, a bullshit job is one that even the person doing it secretly believes need not or should not exist.
Most of the jobs that are shit jobs actually aren't bullshit jobs. Most of the jobs that oppress you are jobs like cleaners or ditch diggers or nurses. Bullshit job is actually kind of the opposite of that. A bullshit job, you're often given a lot of money, you're treated very well, a great deal of respect, often seen as the person in your family who most made something of yourself. But at the same time, you're secretly haunted by the knowledge that you're not actually doing anything, that if your job didn't exist at all, the world either would change in no way, or even might become a slightly better place.
What you do in Initech is you take the specifications from the customers and you bring them down to the software engineers.
Yes, that's right.
Well, then I just have to ask, why couldn't the customers just take them directly to the software people, huh?
Well, I'll tell you why. Because engineers are not good at dealing with customers.
So you physically take the specs from the customer?
Well, no, my secretary does that, or the fax.
So then you must physically bring them to the software people.
Well, no. Yeah, I mean, sometimes.
What would you say you do here?
Well, look, I already told you. I deal with the goddamn customers so the engineers don't have to. I have people skills. I am good at dealing with people. Can't you understand that? What the hell is wrong with you people?
One of my favorite examples of a bullshit job is a museum guard who had to guard an empty room. Quote, I worked as a museum guard for a global security company in a museum where one exhibition room was left unused. My job was to guard that empty room, ensuring no museum guests touched the, nothing in the room and ensure nobody sets any fires. To keep my mind sharp and attention undivided, I was forbidden any form of mental stimulation like books, phones, etc., and nobody was ever there. I sat still and twiddled my thumbs for 7.5 hours waiting for the fire alarm to sound. If it did, I was to calmly stand up and walk out. That was it. Bullshit jobs are characterized by their lack of tangible contribution to society. Graeber categorizes them into 5 types. Flunkies, jobs that are just there to make someone else, generally an immediate superior, look good or feel good about themselves. This might include a PA or receptionist. Goons, jobs that exist to harm or manipulate others on behalf of someone else. Examples would be corporate lawyers, lobbyists. These are the people that no one wants to come face to face with. Duct tapers, jobs that exist to fix problems that shouldn't exist or are easily solvable. This could be a person who manages and troubleshoots an obsolete system that could be automated. Box tickers, jobs that exist to allow an organization to claim it is doing something that in fact it isn't. This is many people in HR. Taskmasters, jobs involving the creation or management of additional work for others, often unnecessary. This could be work involved in the hiring process that don't need to be there and create unnecessary work. Graeber argues that bullshit jobs have significant negative impacts both socially and psychologically. Socially, they represent a misallocation of resources and talents. Economically, they contribute to inefficiency. Psychologically, they lead to disillusionment, lack of fulfillment, and a sense of purposelessness among workers. This dissatisfaction can have broader societal implications, such as increased mental health issues and a decrease in civic engagement.
One of the great mysteries I was trying to answer in that original Bullshit Jobs essay is how is it that capitalism, which is supposed to be the system that would never hire anyone who does nothing because all firms are in competition with each other, actually comes up with a system that looks, if anything, even more elaborately useless than the Soviet Union.
Now, what has brought about meaningless jobs? Well, Graeber posits this is due to financialization. Financialization is when corporations focus on the appropriation of goods rather than making, moving, or maintaining them. Graeber posits that financialization has grown since the 1970s and that the economy that has emerged resembles one of feudalism. This is because financialization means that companies don't need to invest much in production, but rather invest in hiring lackeys, goons, and flunkies to maintain their power and prestige. Graeber argues that this has created a corporate hierarchy of meaningless and pointless jobs, what he calls managerial feudalism. This has been exacerbated by the automation and outsourcing of manual labor in recent decades, as well as the growing number of the population who attend university and are willing to take bullshit jobs to finance the growing student debt. But is there strong evidence for what Graeber is saying? From Graeber's theory on bullshit jobs, we can generate a few testable hypotheses. One, that the number of employees doing useless jobs is high, say 20 to 50%, that useless jobs have been increasing rapidly over time. 3, that some occupations have very high rates of bullshit jobs, financial services, marketing, administration, while others very low, refuse collectors, cleaners, farmers. Number 4, that young workers with higher education qualifications are more likely to be doing bullshit jobs due to student debt. Number 5, that useless jobs cause spiritual violence and poor mental health. The British Sociological Association published an article called Alienation is Not Bullshit, an empirical critique of Graeber's theory of bullshit jobs. In it, the authors examined the evidence for these 5 claims and concluded that there wasn't clear supporting evidence for many of Graeber's claims. Let's walk through those 5 points and see what they said. So number 1, there's a high number of useless jobs. Contrary to this claim, the paper finds that only 4.8% of workers in the EU in 2015 felt that they were doing useless work, which is significantly lower than the 20 to 50% range suggested. Number 2, increases in useless jobs over time. The paper refutes Graeber's assertion of a rapid increase in bullshit jobs, showing that the percentage of these jobs in the EU has actually decreased from 7.8% in 2005 to 4.8% in 2015, contrary to the predicted rise. Number 3, high rates of bullshit jobs in certain occupations. While acknowledging some occupations like teaching and nursing have low rates of perceived useless jobs, the paper challenges the idea of specific bullshit occupations, for example, legal professionals and administrators. Contrary to Graeber's suggestion, these jobs report low levels of useless work. Surprisingly, roles like refuse collectors and cleaners, which Graeber considers non-bullshit jobs, show higher rates of perceived uselessness. Number 4, that there is a disproportionate amount of young educated workers in bullshit jobs due to student debt. Well, this study finds that in the UK, non-graduates are more likely to be in jobs they consider useless compared to graduates. It was 14.6% versus 7.2%, which opposes Graeber's view that actually highly educated young workers are more prone to such jobs due to the student debt crisis. Number 5, useless jobs cause poor mental health. While the paper agrees that perceiving one's job as useless is linked to lower psychological well-being, it suggests a possible alternative explanation. People with poorer mental health might be more likely to view their jobs as useless. This challenges the direct causation implied by Graeber that bullshit jobs lead to spiritual violence and poor mental health. Now, there was another article published that examined some of this data and came to a different conclusion. Those authors stated that Graeber had good evidence to support his conclusions. Personally, I think the paper overstates the case a bit. So the data is actually mixed on this issue, but however, one thing the authors of this separate study note is that people who work in transportation and material moving still report their job to be of little value, yet transportation and material moving is clearly a valuable job for society. So this is quite surprising on Graeber's view. So putting the evidence aside, is there another explanation for why people feel their job is meaningless? Perhaps the answer is alienation. Alienation is when you are estranged from what should be familiar, when what is yours doesn't belong to you and there is a disconnect from yourself or your surroundings. In essence, alienation refers to the separation of two things that belong together. Economic alienation is alienation about your work.
So I was sitting in my cubicle today and I realized ever since I started working, every single day of my life has been worse than the day before it. So that means that every single day that you see me, that's on the worst day of my life.
What about today? Is today the worst day of your life?
Yeah.
Wow, that's messed up. I'm sorry. Go on.
Karl Marx had a specific account of economic alienation, but it didn't entail work that didn't contribute value to society. Rather, Marx posited that individuals felt alienated about their work because the social relations of capitalist production don't allow for self-realization. When someone experiences economic alienation, they aren't able to realize their own ideas, not only because there isn't room for their creative potential, like not being able to work how they want, but how management tells them to, but also because their work is broken up into monotonous tasks that need to be completed in short increments of time. Graeber posited that believing one's work is useful or valuable is a fundamental aspect of one's well-being in the workplace. And this much is true, but the concept of alienation might explain why it is that some workers believe their jobs are useless. Rather than it being because their jobs are objectively without value to society, if we look at the paper, they found that things like management respect, using one's own ideas at work, social support, having enough time for work, workplace participation, and the quality of management were the factors that contributed to someone thinking their job was useless or without value. And this all suggests that the phenomenon of bullshit jobs isn't due to capitalism producing meaningless jobs as much as it is due to capitalism causing economic alienation.